is called Good Morning, Ladies and Gentlemen, Vaishnavas, Damas y Caballeros, Madame y Monsieur. Welcome to another morning edition of our talk on this book, Sri Guru and His Grace, by His Divine Grace, Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we're reading from this chapter called The Original Guru. No, God Consciousness versus Society Consciousness, if you're following along. And I find this is a fascinating book for many different reasons. We hear much about Krishna Bhakti, but we know that Krishna Bhakti is an abstract concept and it's very difficult to realize. So we have what's called Guru Bhakti, and Guru Bhakti is perhaps a little easier to get your head around because it has to do with a direct relationship with your Guru Dev. We understand that Guru Bhakti is easier to practice. The problem then becomes how to practice Guru Bhakti, and the principal problem there is the selection of a proper guru. And this is paradoxical because how are you able to select a guru? I was watching an explanation by John Cleese, who was a member of Monty Python, but has advanced degrees in philosophy and communication and English literature. He's actually a doctor in English literature, although he works as a comedian. But he said that he has a friend who's a philosopher, and his friend was pointing out to him that if you're stupid, you don't know that you're stupid. It takes a really intelligent person to understand that they're stupid. So he said, by the same criterion, um, you cannot really understand the mastery that you have over something until you are entirely a master yourself. So this is a bit paradoxical. It means you may find yourself in a situation where your stupidity is putting you in danger, but you're not wise enough to understand that you need help. And then again, if you seek help as in guru, um, you may not be qualified enough to find an appropriate guru. So this is a bit of a paradox. How are we to uh, evaluate our spiritual master before we accept a spiritual master? And in this way, we can be misled down many wrong paths. So this is the conundrum that faces those who are fascinated by the idea of Guru Bhakti. And in this particular chapter called God Consciousness versus Society Consciousness that we're discussing, um, Srila Sridhar Maharaj is pointing out that there may be a dichotomy between an organization which is set up around a principle of helping people with spiritual advancement and spiritual advancement itself. Here in Mexico, we have a strange concept It's also practiced in other parts of the Earth planet, but it surprises me when I have to go pay taxes. They ask me, well, are you a physical person or are you a moral person? And I think to myself, well, I think of myself as a moral person. Certainly, I'm not as immoral as some of my friends, but I'm also a physical person. So, how does that work out? And I asked somebody, what does this mean, really? And they said, well, a moral person is a corporation. It's a group that came together for a particular moral purpose, like making money. Oh, and in the United States, there was a famous court decision called Citizens United by the Supreme Court, which found that a corporation has the same rights as a person. So if you have First Amendment rights and your speech is protected, a corporation has similar rights. This is much contested, but I found myself torn. Am I a moral person or am I a physical person? Well, a church is a kind of a moral person, an organization uh, determined for a moral purpose. Uh, but sometimes we find that that will work at cross purposes with the individual. And this is what's being discussed in this chapter. So Srila Sri Maharaj is asked uh, about what happens when this comes in conflict. And he says, well, we want to go ahead, not backwards. The formal position will help me to maintain my present status. So when he says the formal position here, he means you're involved with a particular spiritual organization. You have a formal position. You can say, well, I am the mridanga player at the San Jose Temple at 62 South 13th Street, and that's my position. Or you can say, well, I'm the pujari of Rukmini and Dwarkadish in Los Angeles Temple at, 3764 Watseka Avenue. So we have a formal position. The formal position will help me to maintain my present status, and my extraordinary affinity for the ideal will goad me towards the front. So you have these two things to help you. One is your own fire, your own interest in your personal spiritual progress, and the other one is your position. And you have a duty to maintain your position. So sometimes the fire may not be there, but you're thinking, well, I have to rise early and perform the Mangal Arati at 6 o'clock, even if this morning my bones are tired and I don't feel all the inspiration and energy. It's my duty, it's my formal position. And then again, sometimes um, your inner inspiration will goad you towards something higher. Just as there's so many progressive parties and so many missions, uh, progressive communists, progressive Christianity, Catholics, Protestants, Puritans. In this way, Christianity progressed. So there's development in the right way and also in the wrong way. The search for Sri Krishna is dynamic and living, so adjustment and readjustment is always going on. So that's a fascinating moment in the history of the Krishna consciousness movement because Srila Sridhar Maharaj is faced with his own spiritual mission, the Chaitanya Saraswat Math, protecting the nobility and reputation of the Gaudiya Math, which was founded by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and addressing issues that the Western devotees uh, in the United States, the United Kingdom, English-speaking countries and around the world are feeling in terms of doubts regarding how to go forward. So he's saying, well, there's positive and negative development. If you've ever seen uh, sailing boats. Sailing boats sometimes have to tack against the wind. Sometimes you get a favorable wind and you can just go straight, but oftentimes the wind is against you. So you have to zig and then zag. You have to move in a zigzag way. So Srila Sri Ramakrishna will point out that Krishna moves in a crooked way. His movements are not always understandable. The search for Sri Krishna is dynamic and living, so adjustment and readjustment is always going on. So this doesn't mean hypocrisy necessarily, but it means there, there's some back and forth. And we should also change our present position accordingly so that we may not have to sacrifice the high ideal for which we have come. So one needs to pay attention to how Krishna consciousness is moving in this world and adjust oneself accordingly. One is born in a particular land by the arrangement of nature, but his high ideal may sometimes ask him to leave the country. Einstein had to leave Germany and go to America for his high ideal of life. And so many similar instances may be found in the world. The ideal is all in all. The highest ideal in a man is his highest jewel. Our most precious gem is our ideal. Many things are recommended in the scriptures, but they're meant to promote us toward the truth in an indirect way. It is recommended at a certain stage that for the sake of our close friends, we should give up our ideal. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's final instruction is Sarva Dharman Parityajya, Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. If it is necessary to maintain the highest ideal, you must give up your friends. Surrender to me. I am the real purport of the scriptures. The highest kind of idealists give up their country, their family, their friends, and everything else, but they can't give up their ideal. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, it is better to die while performing one's own duty than to try to do someone else's duty, another's duty. That is one stage of consideration, the relative consideration. The absolute consideration is also given in the Bhagavad Gita. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Krishna says, give up everything, come to me directly. This is the revolutionary way. This is absolute. And this is relative. Stick to your own clan. Don't leave them. That is the national conception. There is nation consciousness and God consciousness, society consciousness and God consciousness. God consciousness is absolute. If society consciousness hinders the development of God consciousness, it should be left behind. So, um, Srila Sri Ramakrishna is here going back and forth, demonstrating the tension between two different aphorisms or sutras or shlokas found in Bhagavad Gita. And it's interesting to have a look at this. The first shloka goes like this. It says, Shreyan swadharma viguna paradharma svanushtitat swadharma nidadam shreya paradharmo bhayavaha. He says it's better to do your dharma, even if it's not perfect, even if it's viguna. Guna means quality, and viguna means not good quality, bad quality. Even if your own duty is bad quality duty, it's better to do that than to take up someone else's duty or dharma. And the word dharma is interesting because it really comes from this Sanskrit word drit, which means to sustain, to hold something together. So Srila Prabhupada explained that um, the dharma of sugar, for example, is to be sweet. If there's sugar, it may not be white, it may not be brown, but the dharma of sugar is sweet. You might find another substance like salt that resembles sugar. It's also a powder, it's also white. But the dharma of salt is to be salty. So what keeps something together, what holds it together in an important sense, what sustains it, this is dharma. And if you think of yourself as an eternal soul, an Atma, then your dharma is to realize your own self-interest as a spiritual entity. And for some, that may mean realizing God as the eternal Almighty. And for others, that may be a deep understanding of God within us, the Paramatma. And for the Vaishnavas, it's Bhagavan. So Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti Shabdyate. The real uh, interest of the self is found in uh, spirit, in uh, discovering one's relationship with the Supreme Spirit, or in Krishna Bhakti in the higher sense. This is the Dharma, the true Dharma of the living entity. But in this world, while we're stuck in this world, uh, your Dharma may be to park cars, or your Dharma may be to uh, spin baskets, or to be a teacher, or a policeman, or a carpenter, um, or in the Vaishnava, in the Dharma, excuse me, the Varnashram system. We have Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, these different divisions of labor have been laid out. And the law of Manu is interesting because if William Blake says that one law for the lamb and the lion is tyranny, so the Manu Samhita, which establishes law for all different social classes, points out that, well, the Dharma for a Shudra, for example, may be different than the Dharma for a Brahmana. Whereas a Brahmana is expected to be learned, the Shudra is expected to be hardworking. So we have these laws governing how the Shudras are to be promoted and judged, and different law for the Brahmins, uh, given that different humans function differently according to their what's called in this verse svadharma, or your prescribed duties. In other words, how you live and work and function in society. This is very important, and it's considered in the Vedic Shastras. Uh, uh, Different prescribed duties are given. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj is pointing out this is general, this is society consciousness, this is relative. So, on a relative plane, your personal duty is important. You must do it. You must take seriously your function in society. But on a higher level, we're really interested in Paramahamsa Dharma, which leaves all that aside. So there's a tension between this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Shreyan Svadharma Viguna Paradharma Svanushtita Svadharma Nidanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha. And Krishna later saying, Sarva Dharman Parityaja, give it all up. All this so-called dharma, it's superficial. It's what we were discussing in a previous episode. Narada Muni tells Vyasadeva, Jigupsita Dharma, what you've given in Mahabharata, it's nice, but it's Jigupsita Dharma. It's uh, treacherous in a way. It's it's not the highest form of Dharma that we're after. What we're really interested in is how to surrender fully to God. And if you try to surrender yourself fully to God, you'll find that that may conflict with your ordinary material prescribed duties. Srila Sridhar is pointing out then the tension between these two verses, whereas Srila Prabhupada comments in his purport in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, one should, he says, materially prescribed duties are duties enjoined according to one's psychological condition under the spells of the modes of material nature, whereas spiritual duties are ordered by the spiritual master for transcendental service. He says, for example, a Brahmin who's in the mode of goodness is non-violent, whereas a Kshatriya who is in the mode of passion is allowed to be violent. So this is considered in the law of Manu. Manu is very uh, generous in giving consideration in this way that the lower classes of men will act in such and such a way, and that will be their mode of living. That will be their dharma. And the higher classes are like this, and that would be their mode. But Prabhupada points out, however, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. So you have the example of uh, Arjuna. Uh, he's giving his argument. Why should I confront my family? Family dharma is important. Family is everything. And Krishna tells him, in this case, no. In this case, I need you to act for me. Surrender. And he does so. Under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master, then, a Kshatriya may act as a Brahmin may act as a Kshatriya. Prabhupada says, in the transcendental stage, the distinctions of the material world do not apply. For example, Vishvamrita was originally a Kshatriya, but later on he acted as a Brahmana, whereas Parashuram was a Brahmana, but later on he acted as a Kshatriya. Being transcendentally situated, they could do so. But as long as one is on the material platform, he must perform his duties according to the modes of material nature. So Srila Prabhupada is saying, on the other hand, if you're not going for Paramahansa Dharma, if you're not trying to be a surrendered soul, then at least you should try to follow the ordinary strictures of uh, Vedic principles and the Mano Samhita. Like that, you should perform your duties according to the modes of material nature. Why? Because it's dangerous if you go outside that. So Srila Sri Ramakrishna is going in a couple of paragraphs, he's going back and forth between these two ideas. And in a sense, this is so problematical. It's at the heart of everyone's practical life. So when do you take care of your practical duties, and when do you try to transcend that and go deeper? And so he continues. He points out, on the other hand, say you have a high ideal. Say your ideal is Krishna consciousness. Well, as followers of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, we truly believe that that should take precedence. So he says, God consciousness is absolute. If society consciousness or ordinary dharma or even adherence to a particular religious organization, if that hinders the development of God consciousness, it should be left behind. So from this particular shloka in Bhagavad Gita, Shreyan Svadharma Viguna uh, Paradharma Svanushtitat Svadharma Nidanam Shreya Paradharma Bhayalaha. And the dichotomy between this verse and Sarvadharma Parityajya, he moves on to the Bhagavatam, and he gives us a nice uh, shloka from the Bhagavatam, from the fifth canto, Rishabdev. He says, um, this is confirmed in the Bhagavatam. Gurur na sasyat svajano uh, na sasyat, pita na sasyaj janani na sasyat, daivim na tatsyan na patis sasyan, namochir yak samupeta mrityum. Uh, and in this verse, the word syat, it means become. So we say guru nasasyat. One should not be guru. Svajano nasasyat, or a relative. Pita nasasyaj, or a pita, father. Janani nasasyat, mother. Daivam natatsyan, or divine. Napatis nachasyan, or husband. Namocha yadya samupeta mrityum, if you can't deliver from birth and death. So one who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should not become a guru, a father, a husband, a mother, or worshipable demigod. That's Srila Prabhupada's translation. Srila Sridhar Maharaj puts it like this. He says, even a spiritual master, relative, parent, husband, or demigod who cannot save us from repeated birth and death should be abandoned at once. So that's interesting in that here in Bhagavatam, nasasyat, it means you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't become that. Don't try to become a guru if you can't really save people from repeated birth and death. Hmm? You can make a nice business as a guru. Uh, you can charge money. People will give you donations, but don't do that because you can't save your students from repeated birth and death. Don't be a guru. That's what the shloka is saying literally. Don't be a guru. Don't be a mother. If you can't help your children, and in this case specifically, if you can't deliver them from repeated birth and death, stay away from that. Don't become a guru. Don't be a father, a husband, a mother. Don't set yourself up as a god if you can't deliver uh, from birth and death. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj is showing the other side of the coin. He's saying, on the other hand, don't accept such a person as a guru. They should be abandoned at once. And let's continue his reading. What to speak of ordinary things? Even the guru may have to be abandoned. One may even have to give up one's own spiritual guide, as in the case of Bali Maharaj. So Bali Maharaj is an interesting case in point because he was very successful, uh, Bali Maharaj. Hmm? Bali Maharaj was so successful that he conquered the gods. He conquered the demigods. But he was approached then by Vamanadev, who was Krishna in disguise, Lord Vishnu, and came to him disguised as a dwarf. And sometimes dwarfs are considered lucky, and especially a dwarf Brahmana. If he asks for charity, then he must be given something. So Vamanadev approached Bali Maharaj with the idea of destroying him by asking charity and testing him at the same time. And Bali Maharaj had a guru, and his guru's name was Shukracharya. And this is interesting because Shukra, it means semen, the kind of semen that's used in producing children. And so he's a seminal acharya in the sense that he's a guru because he's the son of a guru, and his father was the son of a guru. So by being the son of the son of the son, the seventh son of the seventh son, Shukracharya is authorized in this way. This is not at all our conception of guru. We believe that a proper guru must have a divine link, not simply a link by birth. But when the Supreme Personality of Godhead asks Bali Maharaj for some charity, specifically 3 paces of land, then Bali smiles at him and says, all right, well, take whatever you like. And to confirm his promise, he takes up his water pot and he's about to uh, sanctify his promise and give Vamanadev what he wants. And then at this point, his Gurudev, Shukracharya, who's really the guru of the demons, but he's described by Shukadev Goswami as the best of the learned. He told his disciple, he said, look, son of Virochana, this brahmachari is really Vishnu. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So be careful. He's supporting the gods. You don't know what dangerous position you're in by promising to give him land. I don't think this is a good promise. It will bring great harm to the demons. This impostor who's disguised as a brahmachari is really Bhagavan, Hari. He's come to take everything from you and give it to your enemy. Don't do that. You're a fool. After he takes everything, what will you have left? You will be unable to give him everything. And as a consequence, your eternal residence will be in hell. And then he goes off a little bit and starts promoting um, a materialistic philosophy. And he says, learned scholars do not praise that charity which endangers one's own livelihood. And he says, in fact, it's okay to lie. The best course is to say no. Lie to him. Tell him you don't really have the land to give or make something up. Uh, he says, um, this is kind of interesting. He says, Strishu narama vivake cha vrityarte pranashankate go brahmanarte hingshayam nanritam syaj jukupsitam. And here's that word again that Narada Muni uses when he's talking to Vyas and telling him what you've given in the Mahabharata is insufficient. Jukupsitam. Here it's abominable or condemned. And so Guru Shukracharya is saying, lying is not really such a bad thing. In fact, according to the Shastra, it's okay to lie. It's syaj jugupsitam. It's not really a bad thing. It's not abominable. If you're flattering a woman to bring her under control, strishu narma vivake cha vritarte prana sankate. It's okay if you're going to try to seduce a young girl. You can lie. Go ahead. Also, you could say it was a joke. Ha, I was joking. You thought I was going to give you everything? No, no, no. I'm the king of the world. I'm not going to give you anything. You're a little dwarf. Leave me alone. So you can always say, it was just a joke. Or it says here, Narma Vivake also means in a marriage ceremony. So you can lie and trick someone into a marriage ceremony. In earning one's livelihood, that's good. In business, vritti arte, you can say, Oh, this I'll sell you this for only $100. It cost me 150. That's fine. You can do that. It's sanctioned in the scriptures. Or prana sankate. When your life is in danger, you can say, "Oh, yes, I'll give you all the money. It's over there in my house. I'll just go get it." Or go brahmanarte if you're going to protect cows or Brahmins, or protecting a person from an enemy's hand. He says falsity is never condemned. And this is kind of interesting because here you have this Vedic guru telling people, advising the king, well, it's fine to lie. Very Machiavellian. Shukadev Goswami said, I'm reading from the Bhagavatam. O King Parikshit, when Bali Maharaj was thus advised by his spiritual master, Shukracharya, his family priest, he remained silent for some time. And then, after full deliberation, he replied to his spiritual master as follows. He says, I'm the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. How can I withdraw my promise because of greed for money? How can I behave like an ordinary cheater? There's nothing more sinful than lying. And because of this, Mother Earth once said, I can bear any heavy thing except a person who is a liar. That's pretty good. Sarvam Shodam Alam Manye Rite Lika Param Naram. Srila Prabhupada says, on the surface of the earth, there are many great mountains and oceans that are very heavy. And Mother Earth has no difficulty carrying them, but she feels very much overburdened when she carries even one person who is a liar. It is said that in Kali Yuga, lying is a common affair. Maya Vyavaharike from the 12th canto. Even in the most common dealings, people are accustomed to speaking so many lies, but no one is free from the sinful reaction of speaking lies. Under the circumstances, one can just imagine how this has overburdened the earth and indeed the entire universe. So, Srila Sridhar, having a look at this verse, Guru nasasyat svajano nasasyat. Just don't be a guru if you're a liar. What to speak of ordinary things? Even the guru may have to be abandoned. One may even have to give up one's own spiritual guide, as in the case of Bali Maharaj, or one's relatives, as in the case of Vibhishana. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj is very expert in uh, the depth of his answers, because not only can he give you chapter and verse from Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam or Vedanta Sutra, but he can come up with unlimited stories and anecdotes from the Puranas or from real life or even from the newspaper. And here he gives the example of Vibhishana, who rejected his brother Ravana, who was a great demon in the time of Lord Ram. In the case of Prahlad, his father had to be given up. And also, these are classic examples given by the commentators on Bhagavatam. Uh, in the case of Prahlad Maharaj, well, his father was Hiranyakashipu. His father was a great demon who tried to destroy the world. And in the case of Bharat Maharaj, it was his mother. This Bharat Maharaj is not the Bharat Maharaj mentioned in the fifth canto. It's not the Bharat Maharaj who was the son of Shakuntala, uh, the father of India. This is not uh, that Bharat Maharaj, but the brother of Lord Ram, because at some point in the Ramayana, uh, Kaikeyi asks her husband, Dasharat, the father of Ram, for a boon, and that's given. And then she says, all right, well, then what I want from you is exile Ram to the forest and make my son Bharat the king. And Dashrath has no choice in the matter. He has to exile Ram. But when it comes to Bharat becoming king, uh, Bharat, Ram's brother, he says, no, I reject this. I will not be the person who robs Lord Ram of Rajya Ram. That will not be me. I may help rule the kingdom for a while he's in the forest, but I'm not the king of Ayodhya. I reject that. So we have examples of people who unfortunately have to act according to their high ideal. Bali Maharaj, Vibhishana, Prahlad Maharaj, Bharat Maharaj, who reject the uh, rule of society as seen even in their Gurudev, their father, their mother, uh, their brother. In the case of Katvanga Maharaj, he left the demigods. And in the case of the Jagna Patnis, the wives of the Brahmins, they left their husbands in the endeavor to search the absolute personality. We need society only to help us. So I'm continuing the reading. If our affinity to the society keeps us down, then that should be given up and we must march on. So the idea is gurus, what is it? Guru nasasiyat swajano, nasasiyat pita, nasasiyat janani, nasasiyat daivam natatsyan napatishchatasya namochi adya samupetam ritya. They can't free you from birth and death. Uh, then give them up. Uh, in Gita, someone complained one day to Srila Sridhar, oh, I don't know why. I think they're simply trying to make some kind of a conversation. Uh, and Srila Sridhar perhaps as well. Um, and they turned to Srila Sridhar and they said, oh, it's such a hot day. And Srila Sridhar in search of Krishna Katha, or because this simply comes to him naturally. He said, this is matra sparsha, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, matra sparshas tu konteya situshna shuka dukkha da. This is uh, Ushna, summertime. It's hot, yes. This is matra sparshas. This is simply material sensation. This is matra. It's like material, sparsha, perception. Uh, O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So, Matra Sparsha, we give so much credence to uh, our material sense perception. It's too hot. It's too cold. Um, it's too expensive. It's too cheap. Um, our world is full of these sorts of dichotomies. It's too this, it's too that. Um, even it's interesting that he mentions sukha dukkha, happiness and distress. Distress, we understand. So many things are distressing. But why would happiness be something to be rejected? Uh, Krishna's pointing out, even the material happiness that you experience, it's just something that comes and goes. You could try to align your life in such a way that everything is always happy, but that's not going to work out because distress will come. You can't prevent it. Ultimately, there's old age, disease, and death. So why not work for a higher purpose? Why not go for something that will take you beyond the matra sparshas, this material sense perception. So your affinity to society means uh, we're always getting involved in temporal things, temporal propositions, uh, and supporting a particular aspect of society. Maybe this week we like the Kshatriya society, and next week we like the Brahmana society. Next week we're really for the Shudras. Uh, Devotees particularly sometimes get caught up in thinking, uh, well, the book says I should be a Brahmana. So what can I do that would be Brahmana? My father was an auto mechanic. But me, I guess I'm a Brahmin. What do Brahmins do? Well, we do astrology. So I'm going to be an astrologer. But perhaps your real affinity is to be a mechanic. So on the one hand, we have to be honest with ourselves. Svadharmaninam Shreya Paradama Bhayava. Don't take up somebody else's duty. You won't really be able to do that properly. But then again, society dharma, it's not the highest goal. So balancing these two problems, it's a real tightrope walk. We need society only to help us. If our affinity to society keeps us down, that should be given up, and we must march on. There's the absolute consideration and the relative consideration. When they come into clash, the relative must be given up, and the absolute should be accepted. So how do we do that? This is where a real Guru Dev comes in and helps us with some practical advice, perhaps. In the case of Narada Muni and Vyas, Vyas is struggling. I tried to give the absolute consideration, but maybe he's right. Maybe the Mahabharata is filled with relative considerations. I have to go deeper. How do I do that? And Narada tells him, well, write the story of Krishna. Write a special book promoting God as a personality. Call that the Bhagavad Purana. When they come into clash, Srila Sri Ramakrishna continues, the relative must be given up and the absolute should be accepted. If my inner voice, my spiritual conscience, decides that this sort of company cannot really help me, then I will be under painful necessity to give them up and to run towards my destination. Wherever my spiritual conscience guides me, any other course will be hypocrisy and it will check my real progress. If we are sincere in our attempt, then no one in the world can check us or deceive us. We can only deceive ourselves. Nahi kalyana krit kascha durgatim tatagachati. We must be true to our own selves and true to the Supreme Lord. We must be sincere. And that's a particular verse that Srila Sri Ramakrishna likes to quote again and again, where he's saying, sincerity is invincible. So, in a way, you can argue, you might say that, well, Srila Sri Ramakrishna is saying the same thing again and again and again, so why is he being so redundant? But he's trying to It's as if a university professor is trying to explain gravity to some 5-year-old children. So what do you say? You come up with, the apple falling from the tree, hitting Newton on the head, or you have to give simple examples so they get it. So I found in editing different transcripts together to create this book, um, Srila Sridhamash would repeat the same thing in slightly different configurations. And I think he's done it so well that there's no real need for anyone to explain. I thought this book is self-evident that anyone who goes through it will just smack their head and go, oh my God, this is so brilliant. But I find, 40 years later, I'm being asked to elucidate uh, the book. But how do you give light to the sun? I have a little flashlight around here somewhere. You know, how do I shine a light at the sun? It's sick, it's very strange. But I really believed, because I suppose I'm a naive person, but I believed that when we published this book, it would end all questions about the guru. Boy, was I wrong. But I'm surprised that 40 years later, people are still interested in hearing it and trying to parse out the meaning. So anyways, this is a very interesting, controversial point. Uh, how do you take care of your own personal dharma uh, in the sense of Paramahansa dharma? Uh, how do you become a servant of God, a lover of God? How do you reflect that in your behavior, your attitude, your daily work? And then again, what's your duty to, you know, the country, the society, your Sunday religion? See, it's an interesting, difficult problem to work out. Many thinkers will have come and gone and will come and go, trying to successfully move through that. The best representative of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, who was really able to carry his tradition, for me, was Srila Govinda Maharaj. And after him, well, we all try to do our part, just like we were talking about Lord Ram a couple of times. There's a story of how Hanuman, His Holiness Hanuman, he puts down his mace, picks up a giant boulder. He's creating this bridge of floating stones to Sri Lanka. And he sees this little spider, and the spider is carrying a little tiny piece of dust. And he says, out of my way, spider, you useless insect. I'm carrying the giant boulder to create the bridge of floating stones from Kanyakumari to Sri Lanka. And the spider says, well, but I'm carrying my little piece of dust. I want to help you, Sri Hanuman. You know? And the moral of the story is we're not you. I'm trying to be like that spider, carrying my little piece of dust and saying, well, I think Srila Sri Ramar said this and it's useful. And we hope that our morning talks are useful to you. You can find, if you look over on the right side of your screen in the chat box, you can find the link that was so generously provided by Suvasini Meenakshi Sundaram to our previous talks so that you can follow this argument. If something happens to me and I can't continue uh, my reading, at least we have a little grain of dust there that you can check out. All right, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, Vaishnavas, children of all ages, Hare Krishna to you. Any questions, comments?
Thank you so much, Maharaji Prabhu. Thank you
Nope.
as always. Very inspiring. Thank you very much. We
All right.
also, today is Ramanavami, so we just have some,
Yes, we invoke the spirit of Lord Ram.
Ramas and,
Srila
yeah.
Sri Ramakrishna was particularly fond of Lord Ram. His original name was Ramananda, and he was a great lover of Ram. I remember once we were at the Mat, long time ago, before all the development. We used to sleep on the roof because it was so hot in that guest house. We would sleep on the roof to try to get a little bit of the cooling breeze from the Ganges at night. And sometimes at night, sleeping on the roof, you would hear something like, and somebody jumped onto the roof. And what? What is that? And right next to the guest house was a giant mango tree. And at that time, the mangoes were green. And on the other side of the house was a big, tall stack of bamboo. And so the monkeys would jump into the bamboo, and then they would use it as a swing, and they would sway back and back and forth, and they'd land on the roof. And then from the roof, they'd jump into the mango tree and start eating the green mangoes. And so that was the story of the gringos and the green mangoes. But so one of the devotees, a friend of mine, he said, well, we have to do something about this. And he talked to Govinda Maharaj to find out if it was okay. And Govinda Maharaj was very generous. So with some bamboo sticks, we bent them and made bows. And with some other pieces of bamboo or whatnot, I can't remember, some sticks, we tried to make some arrows. Obviously had no lethal effect, but the idea was to scare the monkeys. And so we would try to shoot with our bows and arrows against the monkeys and scare them away from the mango trees. Well, when Srila Sridhar Maharaj found out about this, he didn't like it. He said, what are you doing? Don't you understand? These monkeys they're the eternal associates of Lord Ram. Leave them. And so from that time on, we didn't disturb the monkeys. He had a good laugh about it, though. He thought it was funny. I didn't see him laugh very often, but that was one of the things that the curious gringos and the green mangoes and the monkeys like that. Just sort of a funny story. But he always liked telling stories about Lord Ram and Vibhishana. We could listen to him for hours. Anyways, that's it for this morning. So thank you all very much, and nice to hear from you again. And best wishes to all from Kapila, Nandini, and Tungarasa, and Hari Priya. Perhaps this recording will be listened to later by some others, and our hope that they give us our blessings to continue. Thank you very much. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Ho. Bye.
Hi.